You're listening to Bulletproof audio articles. Why fermented foods don't work for everyone. As more and more recent research confirms the importance of the gut microbiome, fermented foods have skyrocketed in popularity. Just 5 years ago, it would have been unheard of to find kombucha in a conventional grocery store. Yet today, it's everywhere. Fermented foods like kimchi, kefir, and sauerkraut contain the beneficial byproducts of fermentation, as well as live microbes, to boost your gut diversity and support better mental and physical performance. Despite studies supporting these claims, not everyone feels the love when it comes to ferments. Are fermented foods truly bulletproof? The answer is actually more complex than it seems, thanks to a compound called histamine. Histamines are byproducts of fermentation produced by certain bacteria and can leave some people feeling pretty messed up. The quick answer is, fermented foods are suspect on the bulletproof diet, but their effects can vary from individual to individual. If you tolerate them, the benefits are wonderful, and if ferments aren't your friend, that's okay too. Here's a quick guide to understanding the histamines in fermented foods, how they work, and how to limit or avoid them as your body needs. Ferments are potent probiotics. So much of your health is tied to your gut biome, the microorganisms that live in your digestive tract. And keeping it healthy and balanced is essential to reduce disease and optimize performance. Overused antibiotics, environmental toxins, and heavily produced or toxic foods can all wreak havoc on your microbiota, nixing microbial diversity and damaging membranes. When your gut biome balance is out of whack, your body becomes tired, inflamed, and weak. In fact, an imbalanced gut is linked to conditions as diverse as diabetes, obesity, depression, eczema, and irritable bowel syndrome. Fermented foods contain live microorganisms and provide a vital dose of diversity to your gut. Studies have linked fermented foods and increased microbial diversity to improved immunity, better weight management, cardiovascular health, glucose metabolism, and even cognitive function. The fermentation process also increases the nutrition of many foods, breaking down anti-nutrients and increasing the bioavailability of stored nutrients. The bacteria behind many ferments also produce beneficial compounds that give these foods their antioxidant, antimicrobial, antifungal, anti-inflammatory, anti-diabetic, and anti-atherosclerotic properties. Byproducts of fermentation from these bacteria include vitamins, enzymes, and beneficial peptides such as CLA. Histamines in fermented foods. A diverse microbiome boasts tons of benefits, but some common microbes actually produce toxins that may leave you feeling less than blessed. These toxins include biogenic amines, such as the well-known histamine, and tend to mess with certain people's guts more than others. If fermented foods leave you nauseous, inflamed, bloated, or just feeling gross, you may be more sensitive to histamine-producing bacteria or foods. Histamines are neurotransmitters that influence your brain function and immune health. In an allergic response, mast cells, a part of your immune system, release histamines, triggering quick inflammation to increase blood flow and let immune cells react to an intruder. This leads to those classic allergy symptoms like puffy, watery eyes, headaches, skin rashes, or a stuffy or runny nose. Histamines also form when bacteria break down protein, both during fermentation and during digestion in your gut. Histamine intolerance and fermented foods. For most people, histamines are no problem, but genetics or a damaged gut can lead to low levels of the enzymes DAO and HNMT needed to break down the amount of histamines coming in. Histamine intolerance occurs when your body can't metabolize the amount of histamine in your diet and starts to accumulate in your bloodstream, sending your body into panic mode. A buildup of histamine can look a lot like allergies or food sensitivities, but the signs tend to be slow, subtle, and even chronic, making it hard to identify. Symptoms of histamine intolerance include skin irritation, hives, throat tightening, increased heart rate, nasal congestion, migraines, fatigue, heartburn, reflux, trouble with inflammation, and weight gain. Which bacteria produce histamines? To understand how fermented foods work with your body, it's important to understand which bacteria produce histamines. When a food ferments, certain bacteria convert the amino acid histidine into histamine. At the same time, other bacteria can actively break down histamine. This balance of bacteria determines the histamine content of fermented foods, as well as impacting the amount of histamine produced when non-fermented foods are digested in your gut. Eating foods high in histamine-producing bacteria can deal a double blow to those with histamine intolerance, both by supplying histamines and by elevating the populations of these bacteria living in the gut, leading to even more internal histamine production. Even those without chronic histamine intolerance can out-eat their enzymes by overloading on high histamine foods. Unfortunately, it's not always possible to know what strains went into fermenting your foods, especially if those foods are homemade. If you're histamine intolerant, you may find that fermented foods just don't work for you at all, and that's totally okay to avoid them. You may also find that you tolerate certain foods or certain strains better than others. Avoiding histamine-producing bacteria and seeking out foods made with histamine degraders may allow you to enjoy your kraut once more. Some things to try. Histamine-producing bacteria, found in a majority of yogurts and fermented foods. Neutral bacteria. That's also in yogurt, but it regulates histamine receptors and reduces inflammation. And then histamine-degrading bacteria. This is actually a yeast, but it increases DAO activity. Low histamine ferments. Fermented foods like sauerkraut, kombucha, and pickles can increase microbe diversity and bring you a whole host of benefits, but only if those bacterial cultures agree with you. You might tolerate some brands better than others, depending on how they're made. And the only way to tell is to try. Experiment with fermented products made with organic veggies, and steer clear of any with artificial additives. Fortunately, foods in the Bulletproof Diet Green Zone are low in histamine, so ferments made with these foods are less likely to leave you foggy or fatigued. And remember, if fermented foods don't sit well with you, it's okay not to eat them. If you're curious to find out which ferments work for you, here's a list made with histamine-reducing bacteria. Low histamine foods. Bulletproof coffee. It's easy to forget, but coffee is a fermented food. Bulletproof coffee beans are designed to have the lowest levels of histamines. Amasai is inspired by a traditional fermented drink of northern Tanzania and Kenya, made from grass-fed, antibiotic-free cow's milk and histamine-reducing bacteria. And avoid these: common store-bought yogurts and cheeses, fermented soy products, apple cider vinegar. It boasts a whole host of benefits for those who can tolerate it, but it's often high in histamines. And home fermented foods. While it may be true that no one makes kraut like grandma, it's almost impossible to know which bacteria are around in homemade ferments. If you like this article and you'd like to learn more, go to blog.bulletproof.com.